Well, hello, everybody. Russ and Anton and Holly from the West Ham Network. When was the last time we did that, for Christ's sake?
Adventures.
But it's breaking news. It's a shame we haven't got your thing, Anton. But
We'll find it. I'll find it.
don't worry. So West Ham obviously have just released, kinda have released their retained list for the 24-25 season, and we're just going on quickly just to talk about it, talk about the main takeaways. Obviously the main, and we've got some slides and Holly's done some quotes and stuff, but the main thing is Aaron Cresswell has signed a new 1-year deal, which we sort of assumed was going to happen, and it looks like, and the club have basically wished the best endeavours to Ogbonna, to Jason Nang, to Kian Forson, to Jacob Knightbridge, to Liam Jones, to Blaze, and to Jimmy Amolo as well. And there's the reason why we say they've kinda announced it, because they're still in discussions with Ben Johnson and Divine Mbama in terms of whether they can have a new deal, because where it seemed all lost with Ben Johnson, as Anton reported earlier this week, there may be green shoots with that discussion. But what do you think, Peeps? What do you think?
It sounds like we're still trying with Johnson, doesn't it? I'm just still not convinced. I've seen that he's got offers on the table. I think Palace is one of them. And probably game time is a massive part of it. And I don't know how much game time we can offer him, just given that he wouldn't be the first choice necessarily in that position. But I would love to keep him. I really would, because I think in terms of squad depth, he's the perfect kind of player where he's not going to be, well, obviously he does want to play first team football, but it's understandable that he's not starting every week. But he's really good and he's versatile and he can play in different positions. So he'd be one I'd really like to keep. Cresswell, like you said, I think a lot of us gathered that he probably was going to have a 1-year extension. He brings a lot of experience, and at a time where we've got transition going on, could it help? I mean, we don't have too many players left with experience. Who do we have? We've got Fabianski and Antonio. That's probably the most.
Yeah, we've got 2 left from the bowling, haven't we? Because Oggy's gone now, so it's just Antonio and Cresswell. It's interesting. I mean, the Cresswell one doesn't surprise me, because we know that Julien was interested in him last summer, and that was one of the straw that broke the camel's back, really, because they couldn't afford to buy Aaron Cresswell, so that's why he left. But I think there's a, and people will say, oh well, that's not really a young youthful side or things like that, but you do get a bit of experience and people who have been there, and after Mark Noble, he's got the most Premier League appearances for West Ham.
And I think if you look at the left back position, for an example, Emerson has been a fantastic player for West Ham since coming in, under the radar. I think a lot of us didn't necessarily think he would perform to the levels he has done. So I think it's a bit of a good business, to be honest, by West Ham to keep Cresswell, whether people like him, rate him or not. It just means that maybe West Ham's vision is, it's not the priority, the left back position right now. And we're kind of, I thought Cresswell's performances when he came on laterally in the season were actually okay. And, maybe under a new style of management, that also could be okay for 1 more year. And it means that we need to put the focus in at the centre-backs. So, as expected, Ogbonna's heading out the door. And we know we need to look at that area for development. But what's interesting is, on Ben Johnson, so I've been a fan of Ben Johnson from the start. I still am a fan of Ben Johnson. I think he's just been a person that's been a victim of the process that we've been under, the management style we've been under, because he was very up there and pivotal to the success we had right at the start of our journey in getting European football. And it was really only when he dropped out of the team to change in positions and started playing in left back or the right hand side of a back three, that inconsistency started to show. But if he gets a shot in that position, I genuinely think he can take over Vladimir Sefal's position. People, it's a big call, it's a big statement, but if you're looking for a young Premier League proven fullback who's got the amount of experience he's got, and he didn't play for West Ham, and Ben Johnson played for Wolves, I think West Ham would be looking at a Ben Johnson.
Don't forget also, I mean, you got, remember, I sort of look back to the whole Jeremy Ngakia situation, and that was very much, we got rid of Ngakia, or he left, didn't offer him as much, as push hard as we could have, because we had Ben Johnson. And it was almost him or Johnson. So Moyes at the time, because it was Moyes had taken over. Was he still? Yeah, I think so. Yeah, he gave me his debut, Ngakia's debut. So yeah, there's still a play there. And the fact is, he's a boyhood. He's been there, since he was a young lad as well, local lad, and I think it's important to keep a little bit of that within a squad. He's homegrown and academy, and so that's two quotas that he works with, and hopefully. He clearly hasn't dismissed it out of hand in terms of staying with the club. I know, because he would have not even gone back into discussion, and West Ham would have just, he's out of contract. So,
the fact that the club want to have talks says also that they're obviously keen. They want him and Mbama to stay. They have their budget. It basically means they've got a number. West Ham have got a number. They haven't met, so they're in negotiations about seeing if they can make a common ground. The players are interested, and the club are interested. So that's a positive sign. If they weren't interested, they would have been announced as leaving. Now this was the opportunity to announce them leaving. They still could leave, but it's quite. I find it quite interesting because it means then, what you sometimes hear in the mainstream media is Mbama's got his heart set on leaving. Maybe isn't so true, and maybe Ben Johnson is heading out the door so quickly. It's not so true, and sometimes the grass isn't always greener on the other side, especially for a player like the likes of Ben Johnson. Because I do think Ben Johnson could go to another team and be a starter, and be a regular starter, because if they play a specific style of football, and I think we still don't know. We think we know what Lopetegui is going to play with West Ham, but we don't. We've not seen him. We've not seen what he's going to have. And if we can convince Ben Johnson to stay, that saves us a lot of money in the transfer market to be able to go elsewhere, where I do believe, personally, right now, the centre-back's the issue. It's not the full-backs. It's the centre-backs are the issue. So if we can convince Johnson that there's an opportunity, it's the centre-backs is the problem. And that's where we need to try and save our money and make our money travel further.
Yeah, and I think the thing about Mbama, and I think what's quite telling is the fact that West Ham have done the release list, so to speak, and mentioned in the article, in the announcement, that they are still in negotiations with Ben Johnson and Mbama. So if it's almost like they've shown their hand to say we're still talking to them. So we don't know, that they haven't left the club yet. But so by even saying that is acknowledging the fact is they still want to keep both of them, because they wouldn't have even mentioned that. It would just Mbama would have been in the list. I think the reason probably why the Mbama and Ben Johnson deals have still been discussed potentially is the fact that they are homegrown in academies. So they do account for, which allows us to go to Brazil and bring in potentially some players. And because we've got 2 academy players, 2 homegrown players already in the squad. That's not including the likes of George Earthy and Kalen and people like that.
But Russ, to add to that, for people that think that's the only reason we keep them, that isn't the only reason we look at keeping them, because West Ham are definitely, very forward in going, do you know what? It's not your time anymore. Like, that's why the release of Forson, a couple of years ago, I genuinely thought, do you know what? He looked decent. I thought he could have been that kind of next Kante style of player, because he had that little bit of bite, that determination in the middle of the park. But he's gone out on loan. It's not necessarily worked. He's now going to go and get a new future at a different club. And I think that's what works. The fact is, yes, they do tick a lot of boxes, but equally though, like, they obviously see something in Mbama. They obviously see something in Johnson. Lopetegui Steiden obviously see something in that makes them think, let's fight the corner for it, because we can look at other youth players, Russ, and tick that box of getting homegrown quota. But what you can't get is experience in the Premier League, and Ben Johnson's got a lot of experience.
Ben Johnson, definitely.
Yeah.
Definitely.
And similar to what you're saying, I think he is the kind of caliber of player that we would then probably look for to replace him. So if we can just save that bit of business and keep him, when we know what he offers, we know how versatile he can be. He's done really well when he's been put in midfield. He seems to rise to a challenge. I think there are a lot of aspects alongside the homegrown and academy side of things that he brings a lot to West Ham. I think he knows that, and I think that's probably why he's playing hardball and why these negotiations are carrying on. But yeah, I think he's a massive asset to West Ham in terms of what we actually need at this moment in time, so we can invest in the most priority positions this window rather than having to find backup elsewhere.
Well, definitely, most definitely. I think, as I said, but to go out and replace what Ben Johnson could bring to the squad, you'd have to probably buy in 2 or 3 players. You'd have to buy in, his second choice right back. He's probably third choice left back. He can play in a back 3 on the right hand side. He can play central midfield. He's played right wing. He's played left wing. So if you try to get a couple of players to cover those positions that he brings, he can plug a lot of gaps in the squad. And so it doesn't surprise me that other clubs are interested in him as well. I don't think if he went to Palace, would he be a starter? Probably not. But again, it's his adaptability. And some people like that, unfortunately, he's 24 now, I think. So 24, 25, I think, maybe slightly younger. So, that's unfortunate. That's like his role now. It's like,
and he's a West Ham lad.
Yeah, exactly. Went to the school in Loughton.
Yeah.
And top boy. But I think the most interesting one, I think, is probably the Aaron Cresswell one, because the club have made a big splash about that. And you got some quotes from Cress, haven't you, Holly?
Have indeed. So I just pulled a couple out. And basically the crux of it was that it's all about the bigger picture and actually being able to sort of help the club through this transition. But Cresswell here was talking about how much it means to be playing at West Ham, saying that he's aware that there's been a bit of a change in the role. He hasn't played as much, but he's been in football a long time, and he knows that there's a lot more to it than just being on that pitch. And saying that he'd like to think that he's done well when he hasn't been playing, and that he's supporting the team and the lads. So for me, I think that's massively important, because this is the kind of player that will actually help us through this transition, and show the new players coming in what it means to be West Ham, and the things that we always talk about. Obviously, we have got Noble as well to help with that behind the scenes. But I don't know about you, but I think I wanted us to invest, I guess, in longer term projects with players. But now this has been done, I'm pretty happy. Like, I feel like it's a good bit of business done, and we can sort of move on and focus elsewhere.
Yeah, for me, he is the on-field Mark Noble role this year. Yeah. So when Mark wasn't playing, particularly that last year before he retired, he was still there as sort of a behind the scenes that, and we know every decent manager we've had. I appreciate Lopetegui is obviously the head coach, but every manager we've had decently, there's been that sort of conduit, so it's the right word, conduit, or sort of confidant within the team. So you go back to Big Sam and Kevin Nolan. You've got Mark Noble and Bilic. You've got Declan Rice and David Moyes, and I think he would play that role. As you said, we know Lopetegui was keen about him joining Wolves last year, so he has obviously respect for the man. So I think he will be that sort of go-between for the players and the head coach, which is what you need. And as I said, you've still got Mark Noble obviously as the whether his job title is now, but in sort of the board perspective, and then you've got Cresswell in the on the playing staff, and again homegrown quota as well. And it is, and so it's not. And as I said, even with I said before, and I always say all the time, with someone like Brighton, yes, they go out and buy all these young players, but they still have James Milner, they still have Adam Lallana, well, they did his leaving, but Lewis Dunk, they still have a core of very experienced players to guide the likes of maybe a Luis Guillermo, maybe him, in terms of showing him the way, so to speak. And particularly with Ogbonna going, that's a big leadership. We know, I remember when we signed Aged, and Colton was doing the sort of the interview with him at Rush Green, and Oggy was there training, and met him, and it was part of the video, wasn't it? I think so. We know that what important role he made. So I think to have lost Oggy and Cresswell in this sort of retained list would have been a real issue, and we've seen that before when we've lost leaders. I think when we lost Mark, there was an issue of leadership. while Deck was sort of learning the ropes, and I don't want that to be a situation again, particularly if someone like Zuma leaves as well, and then Gerd's likely to leave. So having a bit of continuity, I think, is a good idea. Definitely.
Definitely. And I think we're looking at a situation as well where we're talking about Zuma and obviously people questioning how much longer he can play for, where you want people that I suppose are able to play at a good standard on the pitch, even if they're not all the time. And then this is what Cresswell was also talking about, basically saying that he doesn't just want to sit on the bench and he wants to remain ambitious. He was talking here about how he still wants to play and that he wouldn't have signed another contract if he didn't think that he had something to offer on the pitch. So he wants to continue working behind the scenes. And the thing that's music to my ears is trying to keep the standards high. And I think that's so important for us to just not let things slip during a transition. I think things can get forgotten, things can get pushed by the wayside. I think having somebody that has been here for so long and knows what does work and what needs to carry on, just keeping those little standards ticking by, I think is going to be so important for us.
Most definitely. And I think, he's obviously very settled. I know he was looking to go back up north, but clearly that wasn't as much of a pull as staying at West Ham. Otherwise, he would have gone. We've seen that Craig Dawson and people like that have gone when family's been an issue, and no issue with that at all. I think that perfectly. I think it's actually a very noble thing to do, rather than sort of say I'm leaving for the money, I'm leaving for family reasons. Now, what's going to be interesting to see now is we know what we haven't got now. We know what we haven't got anymore. So we haven't got a third choice goalkeeper. Yeah, we sort of have, because Nathan Trott is sort of third choice, but we don't know what's happening with him. Although he's been offered the 2-year extension. Obviously, he's accepted it because he's not in the list. We know Oggie's gone, so that's our fourth choice centre half. We need to replace.
Yeah,
at least without necessarily Gerd and various others going. And in terms of the development, in terms of the youth team players, a lot of them we thought were going to leave. We thought Jerry was leaving. He's been doing trials with QPR as well, same as Blaze. Liam Jones, Steve Jones's lad, he's not been retained. He was training with the under-21s at QPR, but he was part of the recent Hong Kong Sevens with West Ham, which was a bit of a surprise. Maybe that was the last chance, or maybe I don't know why he was included in that. The one I'm gutted about is Jacob Knightbridge, because I thought he was a real. I think I'd like to think he's the one that got away. And then obviously you've got Dan Chesters, who I thought could have had a fair crack this year as that sort of as a right back, as a right wing back particularly, because that's the position he was converted to by Potsy before he went to Salford City. And Kean had a really successful loan at the Dagenham Redbridge, played pretty much every game. He was third in the Players Play of the Year there this year, so maybe he'll go back to Dagenham Redbridge, and hopefully that will be the right thing for him. Not too many shocks, really. I think we assumed a lot of those, to be honest. The only shock for me was, as I said, the club in the statement saying that they were still talking to Divine and Ben.
Yeah.
Really, in all honesty.
Yeah, I think that is a good statement of intent, that chapter is not yet closed and that we're still remaining hopeful, and hopefully we can get a couple of nice surprises there. Keep them in, that would be lovely. And another thing I was quite happy to see, so I jump back to Cresswell as well, but Stuyton's actually being quite vocal now on everything that's happening in terms of transfers, and came out with these comments, basically just talking about the value that he brings to the club on and off the pitch. So seeing that Stuyton's playing a really active role, kind of in making sure that we've got the continuity, I think is really important.
Well, yeah, you tell you what, I mean, that's the key thing. The fact is that Tim is being instrumental in these announcements, and he's been at the forefront, where it would have probably been obviously previously done by Moyes or David Sullivan, which to me is again encouragement to show that actually the technical director leads these discussions, and obviously this has been done by Tim and his team and Mark. It hasn't been done by it's probably been again. The assumption now is all of this has been dealt with by Tim. All Julian does is manage and coach, so he's coached the team. So all these types of negotiations are handled by Tim. So it shows it's not a hangover from the Moyes era. It's not, it's actually, this has been done by Tim. And arguably, maybe a lot of that negotiation was done previously with Moyes rather than by Tim. And so hence why maybe the Divine and the Ben Johnson discussions are having a bit more of a prevalent, place in what West Ham are talking about because of that exact reason, which is great. So it's encouraging. It's encouraging, that on top of all the links with players from all over the world. It's showing that hopefully we're going in the right direction in terms of our recruitment and our player retention.
Yeah, I completely agree. And there's quite a debate going on in the comments in terms of sort of deadwood, old guard, who you should keep in, who you should get rid of. And I think it's just finding that right balance, because I think we do need to keep some of the old guard with the experience to help us almost transition through this new phase and keep the standards that we have, but then improve on that. So I think the pressure is now on for us to definitely make a lot of improvements this transfer window. But this is almost like the bones of it, so we know what we're starting from, in my opinion.
Exactly, yes. It's now we've got to put the meat to the bones. And also, don't forget, this season, we haven't got European football. So Cresswell may only get half a dozen games this season, where in a European season, he may have got group stages and, he might get a couple of games on the cups, for example. So it's not like he's going to be... But also, what's useful with Cresswell is that he can play left side that back three as well. And if he goes to a back three, for example, for some games, Cresswell can slot in there and play in that position very well, because he does. And particularly with someone like Agard, who's left-footed, who's our only really naturally left-footed. Actually, he is, because obviously Obonna's gone, who's left-footed. So that's a bonus as well. And then you've got obviously the ability to put Emerson as a left wing back, but also you could put Ollie Stars in there as well for stuff like that. So there's loads of, so it's the fact is we've got rid of some of Deadwood already. Oggy's gone. He'll retire now, I'd imagine. Crest has got enough for another season. Obviously, Fabs has got another season. So for me, this summer transfer window is about improving our Premier League squad, and hopefully by the end of the next season we've had a good Premier League season and we're in Europe, and then next summer we can concentrate on improving it for the European campaign. So it would be then Cresswell's gone, Fabianski's gone, and the next ones are in. So it's not a case of doing it all now in one window. That for me that doesn't work. Too much change.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're guilty of as fans. We always want everything sort of now, and we look at all the positions that we're missing out on, all the players that are kind of like 50-50. We want to replace them all now. We want to get improvements in now, and then we want them all to hit the ground running. Whereas I think what we're going to have to build, and what Tim Stuyton being at the club is going to hopefully build, is actually being able to have a project over the years to come where we're continuously building and continuously improving. And it might be that sometimes we're short of one position, or we get a load of players injured in one position and we missed out on something. But if we can keep building and improving, I think that's going to be key to us actually having long-term success, not having a few really good seasons and then completely dropping off. Yeah,
exactly. And it's about continue. I mean, I think Tim was quoted in saying, a rebuild is about a 5-year project. But to be honest, a rebuild never stops, because look at Man City. Man City, potentially Edison's going in the summer. He's going to go. Who's been their cornerstone for the last 3 or 4 years at least. So that he's replacing. And in every season, Pep will say, right, okay, he's going. I'm going to bring him and him in. They get rid of Mahrez, they bring in Jeremy Doku. So that's how you act as a proper club. It doesn't. We've been, we're sort of this period now we're in now. Part of it is because of the poor management of the squad under Pellegrini, because that was 4 or 5 years ago when a lot of these players were on 4 or 5 year contracts. So it's just, the idea is to not stagger it so much now. So not everyone is on a 5-year deal. Some people on a 3-year deal. Some people on a 4-year deal. Yeah, Bowing's on a 7-year deal. So that's again proper management of the squad. So look, we'll see what happens. As I said, obviously potentially exciting times in Brazil. We'll be talking more about that tomorrow, won't we, Holly?
Yes, indeed. So we're going to be having a chat with Tim Vickery, who knows everything about South American football. So that will be going live tomorrow. And we're going to get some proper insights into all these players that we've been linked with, which is very exciting. So very much
probably someone who actually knows what they're talking about.
Exactly.
So not someone who's watched, not us who've watched the 10 minutes on YouTube and think we know the player. Someone who actually lives and breathes Brazilian football. So that's really interesting. We'll put that up probably tomorrow at lunchtime. So make sure you keep an eye on that. Tom asked a good question. Will he get a testimonial? Technically, yes, but I don't think he will, because we have to pay for it. That's the only issue.
It's that problem.
But that being said, we do have a number of game lease within our terms of our rental agreement, and that's why potentially we could be having the Betway Cup come back this year, because obviously we've got no European football. So there may be available forecasts. Maybe.
It there may be.
There might be. Yeah, exactly. Dun, 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 dun. So I don't know how many games we have leased for them. I suppose it depends about the cup competitions as well, because we have a number of all the Premier League games, plus I want to say 2 or 3 cup games, I think, as part of the lease agreement. So if we get drawn away and maybe get knocked out or whatever, then there might be a game free for him. I don't know, but it otherwise it will cost something like 200 grand, I think, to run a testimonial. I think it's important for someone like a testimonial because it's such a rare thing now in football, to have players of being more than 10 years at a club. It would be a shame, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, no, you have to celebrate those long-serving players as much as you can, because, like you said, it is so rare. We very rarely see that at all now in the top tier of football. So, yeah, loyal players deserve celebrating. And people saying you can't judge Tim till he's had 3 transfer windows. Completely agree. It's a long-term project. He can't make it all happen.
3 proper transfer windows as well. I mean, this for me is the first proper transfer window because he hasn't got the Moyes veto.
Yeah, and he's had time to now plan and actually, do what he thinks we should be doing. So, going to be exciting. Sad to see the Ogfather leave. Same. I feel like it's been a long time. It is quite an emotional sort of goodbye. He's always been good for us. Will
he do one of those videos? You know, like those, because Declan Rice never did.
Yeah.
He just sent out, his PR team sent out a thing. But you think, one of those videos where that it opens and it's like a chair. And he comes in and sits down and goes, "Okay, let's do this."
Little tear.
Yeah. I'm sure he will, because
I think so.
Because it's one of those things where, as I said, now there's only two of the bowling years left in the squad now.
Yeah.
So they're a dying breed, so to speak.
Exactly. And apparently, see a bit more content. Oh, there's a bit. I was going to say it was a bit of a shame that it was he was grouped in. It was like an Ogbonna and a Nang sort of press release that went out on the website. I was like, I've been there for so long. I'd hope there would be more content, but it sounds like
I don't think Joseph will get one. Bless him. Everyone like, who the fuck is this guy? But yeah, bless him. Right, I'm going to have to dash to because I'm going to get some work. But
I'm going to head off as well. But there we go. The beginning of the transfer window. We've got the bones. Add the meat to it now. Let's go.
Exactly. Come on, Tim. Anyway, don't forget to keep an eye on the channel. As I said, tomorrow at lunchtime we'll have Tim Vickery, the man from Brazil, the leading sports journalist when it comes to Brazilian football. A big coup for the West Ham network. Obviously, we had Guilherme last month. This month we've got Tim Vickery. That's the type of caliber we get. And so exactly. And so make sure you keep an eye on that, and all good stuff will follow. Anyway, take care. Me and Holly, take an Anton who's left. Take care. Stay safe. Stay warm. We'll keep the faith. Come on, you Irons.
Come on, you Irons.
Irons.
Irons.